As Emily suggested in that last comment, the next and a very significant part of the publication process with an academic press is peer review. In the Canadian context, this means with books, this means a single blind peer review process, and with anonymous reports that look at the final completed manuscript, the whole thing. This is integral not only to determining the scholarly value of your work, to improving it, it's also a functional step in allowing university presses to publish books, because those peer reviews will be used both by an internal publications review committee at the press in order to grant the press the ability to use their imprimatur, the name of that university on the book, as well as by committees at the Aid to Scholarly Publications program at the point when that application is made, I mean, really the most significant part of that application, and the only part in most cases of the material that the internal publications review committee at a press is looking at is the reports on your manuscript and the author's response. So these are solicited by the editor that is working with you on your manuscript. I think in most cases, I'm certainly in my case, I'm happy to field suggestions if you feel there are very important people to read your book, but you can't say whether or not those people will be used or will be asked. It's also quite important. I mean, certainly. So the basic aspect of the thesis disqualifies people like your supervisor, people on your committee. There's also, even if it's not a thesis, people that have looked and given you personal feedback on the work before, whether it's a sample chapter, whether it's something, anything really, anyone who has read the book and who you know who they are and has given you feedback on the book is more or less considered not an eligible or a good reader. This process, I would say, under good circumstances, usually takes a couple of months. You have to. I know at our press. I mean, in fact, I've seen it. It's interesting to note that most journals ask for reports back on prospective articles in a longer amount of time than publishers do on book manuscripts, which are several times larger and entail a lot more work. So we do suggest that the report should come back in 4 to 6 weeks, but and the reality of that is that sometimes the people that agree to do the review will take a little bit longer.
Are they paid?
They're paid in a very token way with a token honorarium that in no way represents the hourly wage that is necessary to evaluate the manuscript, but they are given a token honorarium or the possibility usually of a selection of a certain dollar amount of books from the press that is soliciting the review. When those reviews come back, I think the standard is that 2 reviews are necessary for a book, unless those reviews are in disagreement, or unless the book is a particularly unique project that is either very interdisciplinary or is something where you really feel that it's important to have a third assessor of a particular kind to complement the other 2. But generally, the rule is 2 reports. You're given the opportunity to respond to those reports, and I think one of the important, I mean, this can be obviously, for obvious reasons, this can be a process that's fraught with a lot of tension and anxiety. Nonetheless, once you get the reports back, it's important to I'm not saying let them sit in your inbox without looking at them, but we usually say, we usually give a sort of a timeline that is fairly generous in terms of composing your response to those reports, because there will often be stuff there that you will have to mull over. And that mulling over process will be necessary to the kind of serious engagement that's necessary to demonstrate in that response, and also to deciding on what the best way to address some of the questions that may be raised in those reports is in terms of revisions to your manuscript. And so that response document is a way of ensuring that you're not silently acted upon agent in this process, and it gives you even the possibility to disagree with some of the findings of the reports, but it's most important as a way of engaging with that criticism, and secondly as a way of talking specifically about changes that you're going to make to your manuscript. So that's an overview of that process and the way that type of material is used.
And if I could just add, in the review process, I always tell authors this from the fore: if you've got a thesis into book manuscript, the chances are hugely likely you're going to go through 2 rounds of peer review, not 1. So do not feel discouraged. It is just a necessary part of the peer review. We need to get 2 excellent reports recommending publication before we bring it forward. And so don't feel discouraged if you get what we call an R&R, or revise and resubmit. It's normal. Likewise, if you are the editor of a multi-authored volume, the chances are more than likely you're going to go through 2 rounds of review because of consistency issues there. So just things to bear in mind.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that it's possible under any circumstances with whatever kind of book that a second round of review will be necessary, which is why it's very important in the response to have that kind of critical engagement, and to have that engagement be translated into constructive and specific terms about revisions, because people will be able to evaluate whether or not those will satisfy the reviewers on the second round, and that may be part of the type of discussion that you will have with an acquisitions editor when composing the response to those reports, because it is a very particular kind of document, and it's destined for a very particular audience in terms of those evaluative committees, and it's important that you strike the right tone and the right level of detail there. So also don't be offended if your editor comes back to you and says, I'm not really sure what you're doing here, I think it would be better to maybe address this, but be prepared for several drafts of that even after you've submitted the first draft to your editor, and that the outcome of those reports, as Emily says, is you do need a very relatively strong a strong recommendation of publication in order for that to be published, and whether it takes until the second round of reports to get that, that's necessary to making this a valuable book. So.